Afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Design Miami. My name is Muys Snijders. I'm the head of art collection management at AIG, and I will be moderating this panel today called Shaping Our Environments. I couldn't be more excited to be here. This is the second year that AIG is sponsoring and commissioning the Collectors Lounge. Some of you might have already seen it, some may not have seen it yet, so please make sure you do go and see it. For those of you that haven't seen it, it's right behind us here. And this has all come together through a partnership with the three wonderful people that are sitting next to me, as well as their teams and our team at AIG, who I'm very grateful for making this all happen. So I will now start this talk with introducing my panelists, and I think who can do that better than each one of them themselves, because I have read so much about their wonderful careers, but I think just listening to them probably will help a little bit more. So Bradley, over to you first.
Hello, I'm Bradley Bowers. I'm a designer and artist based out of New Orleans, Louisiana. I see a Bourbon Street shirt in the audience, so that's what's up. I've been practicing for about 10 years now, graduated from Savannah College of Art and Design, who's also represented here at Design Miami. And yeah, I kind of consider myself a contemporary artist, designer doing art objects. So it's nice to be bringing things into a space that's more about interactivity.
Great, thank you. Alexis.
Good afternoon, my name is Alexis Cogul. I'm actually an architect. I have a practice base in Miami and originally from Barcelona. Born and raised in Barcelona, studying a SARC week and a master's in urban sciences and master's in architecture. And we've been actually involved in the design lounge as an architect. And we're actually proud of having like a design house in Miami. The practice is architecture as a medium. So we don't consider it on the technical side, but more on the poetic side of architecture. And we're happy to always be collaborating and creating synergies with beautiful designers and obviously brands and support design, and of course Design Miami and AIG that actually is our medium to create something. No? So I'm glad for that, and thank you very much.
Hello everybody, Francesco Farina, CEO of B&B Italia. I'm not an artist, I'm not a creative person. I'm a lucky person because I grew up looking at arts, looking at design. I spent the last 22 years of my life proposing ideas, proposing what I believe everybody should see, and it's mostly focused on beauty, focused on people, focused on creativity and inspiration. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So this Collectors Lounge, I want to hear a little bit more as to, it's almost like a chicken and an egg. What came first and where did we go from there? So we sort of had this empty space, probably about 6 months ago, maybe a little longer, that we came up with some ideas and this whole concept came to fruition. But I kind of probably want to start with Alexis, I would say, to sort of talk us through what was the vision, what were the thoughts, what were the ideas, and what did you have in mind for this partnership when you sort of started with this project?
So actually it was pretty organic the way that we started. As you said, it actually was like 6-8 months ago. We started talking with Design Miami. Design Miami actually commissioned ourselves to design the lounge. And always from the beginning, the sense of collaboration, on the sense of like, we have to create something that transpires more on the sense of we're building something that is not just a display, that basically is a cumulative of like displaying some pieces or some brands are actually getting some functionality, but also like it's actually an installation. No? So it's always been that concept that we start phrasing on the space of what happens if actually we create an installation that it has a double side of functionality, which at the end of the day, that for us is what is architecture. And in that collaboration efforts, we start basically crafting that team that organically happened, which is basically Bradley Bowers and his handcrafted pieces, and then obviously the B&B and our initial conversations about like we're gonna do a beautiful space that is not just beautiful, but actually people can experience that concept. And everything at the beginning started with a premise of the golden age of the future, which is the topic of the fair this year. And at the end of the day, when you think about it, what do you imagine as the golden age of the future? We had like numerous conversations and trying to reimagine something. And we come up with a conclusion that is like, when the humankind celebrates the golden age, it's actually a celebration of a past achievement, no? So when you think about the future on that sense, it's actually you're thinking about your present, no? And the reason why golden age of the future was presented as a topic to us this year is because obviously we're post-pandemic. There's certain things that change in all of us, you know, spaces, living, like the way that we actually relate, the relationships between people, no? And how that translates into design, into decorative arts, into architecture. That was kind of like the premises, no? So, and obviously we've been involved since the beginning, like pretty much on the space, and it's not just like pasting things over, it's that the process is what has been important to us. And I think as you can see it, no? We're seeing here an image that is a render that we did of the space before it was built. So I think it's important for us, and we're pretty proud that if you guys walk down the aisle and over there and then you see the space, you will see that it's pretty similar to what we're seeing here in that image, no? And that's actually what makes us like, I think is the successful story of that is this, no, for us.
And another aspect of it that I think was interesting was creating a space where people could walk into a room that was genuinely built by hand. And for that, I think we all have been living in our homes for such a long time now because of the pandemic. And when you are forced to sit in an environment for so long to do your personal life and your work life, you start to realize that not everything that surrounds you is working for you or uplifting you or giving you some sort of solace or retreat. And in my own practice, I'm keying in on that a lot more to start using materials that are more warm and more inviting and more nurturing. And when you walk into that lounge, the first day I walked in, when I arrived, it was like I was going into a spa. And that wasn't by accident. It was because this was a space that was created for people to go into a retreat of some sort in an environment like this where it's so high energy, so overwhelming. To have a retreat or to have a kind of a spa, but that still spoke to you, that wasn't sterile. And I think that's really what we did a great job of nailing, is you can create public spaces that can satisfy a large variety of people without being so banal and mundane that they don't satisfy anyone. And I'm really happy with what we pulled off with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, when we first arrived here, we saw this huge juxtaposition between this space, which has a very strong energy and a very strong presence, and it's very solemn, and then the space that's across, which has this bright sun shining in, and it's this flood of light and warmth. So I really recommend everybody to go and experience that. Francesco, like, I'm so excited for the pieces that I've seen in our lounge. Not only are they so comfortable that you literally do not want to leave, so we have a bit of a challenge there that people really sit for hours in these chairs, and we have queues outside of our lounge of people, you know, wanting to get in and relax in one of your incredibly beautiful furnishings. Can you tell us a little bit more, because some of these furnishings have been around for such an enormous amount of time, so, you know, what is the evolution of the furnishings and how does B&B think about these things?
I would like to start from the previous question.
Yeah.
When we started talking about this possible partnership, we were even inspired by the title of this edition and our pieces and what we are presenting in this beautiful Design Miami edition. Again, has been for us inspired using some of our iconic pieces. Again, we presented Camaleonda designed by Bellini, a product that was designed 50 years ago, exactly 52 years ago, was in production for 7 years, and today is an iconic piece. We decided to bring back in production Camaleonda, but with a different type of vision, maintaining the aesthetic, maintaining the design, but of course considering where we are now. So there is an environment that is changing. I don't like even to think at the last only 2 years, but overall there is a new approach to the life, and it's even a better approach to the life. We are much more conscious. We want to approach the future in a different way, protecting our environment. That is what was our inspiration when we started this beautiful collaboration, and thank you again. So we decided to bring back products like Camaleonda, designed by Bellini. We presented Le Bambole just relaunched now in the 2022, but both products, again, iconic products, are today presented in a different way than in the past. In the past, we didn't know some choices in the production way that could have impacted so much the future. So today we present Le Bambole. Le Bambole is a 98% recycled product. Is much more conscious, the approach of B&B Italia, thinking that that product is going to stay in the house of our clients for 30, 40 years. And of course, the sustainability for us is now really important. It drives B&B Italia in every choice that we do. And we want to be as leader in the design industry. We want to be even an inspiration for our partners, because I believe that we can talk about competitors, but in reality, the design industry is made by influencing each other. B&B Italia want to influence even the others in thinking at the sustainability. I can talk about beautiful things, but again, I'm not a creative person. I'm talking about an approach of a company that likes to work with the master in the design, and we all together should have this type of approach.
Wonderful. And yeah, as much as protecting the environment, protecting the actual objects, that's very important to us at AIG. Like, we spend a lot of time in clients' homes. We spend a lot of time looking at where the vulnerabilities are and where the risks might be, and how we can protect the design and art pieces for future generations. But you know, like, we're spending so much more time at home, right? Even since the pandemic, yes, a lot of things have opened up, but here we are. And our home space has also changed from being truly a home to also being a working space. And that presents all sorts of new challenges, but also some excitement. So I kind of want to ask my panelists here, like, how do they see these changes, and how did it translate to their individual practice?
I guess I'll start. So I've noticed that, and for a while, ever since grad school, I've kind of had this in the back of my mind that I think homes are very intimate spaces naturally, but intimate in a way where walking down the street, you don't have much of a say-so on where the tree goes or where the building goes or what the building looks like. That's all dictated to you. When you get home, that's the one space where everything in there is your decision. And so what I try to do is provide people with options, a variety of choices, so that they can suit who they are maybe in that moment or who they think they will be one day. And when we started working from those places, I think that trickled over into career paths as well. How do I want to be as a professional? How do I want to see myself? How do I want to pace myself? And so I think what we're finding now is what was going to be an office desk or an office chair for a cubicle space in a building that now has to do that in the living room or the kitchen. Now material has to change, where these wooden pews, for example, I'm excited to see the era of wooden office chairs, but chairs that have some sort of technological spin to them. So I think what's kind of happening in the world, in my eyes, is you're starting to see hybrids erupt or come up into the forefront, where previously a show like this with a lot of these smaller design groups or smaller galleries showing, they would be considered outliers, where now that's kind of what I want. If I'm going to be here for 8 extra hours, I want something funky in the back of my room when I look up from my computer that can kind of jolt me again. So that's what excites me about the future of design, and about how materiality is shifting, how personalities are shifting, and perspective is changing. Did I answer that question? I feel like okay, I thought I started somewhere and I felt like I was going to get back to it.
I mean, I'm gonna start a little bit further. It's kind of like a really broad question about like how the living is actually is a perception issue, no? So, and we actually, I mean, I'm an urban planner as well, and years ago I'm from Barcelona, Spain, and we do studies about like cities and how people. Basically, when you do urban planning of a city, is a deductive process where normally attorneys decide how we're going to zone the areas and how we're going to do the streets, and then basically the growth and the living happens, no? So at that time, I remember that we were changing a way on reading the cities and doing an inductive process. And the induction was that I remember we were walking to the city with a group of 7 people, And then I was taking somebody that was living in the little town next to Barcelona, and it was basically, I was telling him, why you don't draft a map, why you don't draw a map? What is your path between your house and your work? And everybody was drawing like the kind of like perception of space and city, no? And we were taking all these drawings and understanding what is the use that the people needs in that city because they use it. And now you actually want to say, why are you talking about that, no? So the reason why I'm saying that is because fast forward 20 years later, well, not 20 years, it's just 10 years, okay? So I'm not that old. So 10 years later, we had COVID, we had all these things, and I had that feeling when people come back to me, when we were designing their homes, you know, they had a deductive program in their head. They come and say, listen, I want a living room, I want a dining for 20 people, I want a small kitchen, I want to look here, the sun comes there, and that's what I want to have 3 kids, or whatever program they wanted. And you say, how many times are you going to eat with 20 people? And I say, just once a year. And they say, why are you dedicating that space to that dining instead of like doing a living, which you use it every single day? What I mean by that is like, COVID happened and people start using their homes. And then they start actually, it's an interaction between the space and the person because of, as we know, we're sleeping at home, we spend some time of the weekend, but we want to be out, you know? So people start actually realizing that the way that I perceive like the layouts or the program of a house is kind of dictated of what is the standard. It's not what I'm doing, no? And now people is living in the house, is staying more, as he's saying, people is working there, he uses every day 9 hours a day. So you're start realizing that maybe it's not how I want to use the house, and they're more savvy, you know? It's like somebody that has a piano in the house, and now he's playing the piano, no? And now he says, maybe it's not the right piano for me, you know? I need a better one, because now I know how it sounds. So I believe that that's what it changed in our profession, that's what I've been reading. We're just conductors on trying to questioning people what we really want to do. But now people is saying, no, I know how to use my house. I know what I want. And it's not just because I think I have to have that, no? So, and that for me is actually really positive because it's a more like noble conversation instead of like it has to be like that, you know? And it's like, it doesn't make any sense, you know? So, I've been saying that, no? It's like that educational process that unfortunately happens, but we can actually, that's why the reason of the fair this year, no? The golden age of the future is like, let's forget about everything. What is actually bright about what happened, no? The golden age is like something horrible happened, but always something great like comes up, no? So I think it's in design world and living space, that's something great that I can see that is basically occurring, you know?
Wonderful.
No, please.
No, please go ahead.
Of course, I agree, and we had many conversations together. This partnership was even an opportunity to know each other, and I'm perfectly aligned with what has been said. I would like just to add that today we look at our clients, we look at the world, and we see that the clients, we all want to be much more self-represented even by our homes. Not only the exteriors, it is a matter of we were focused on cars, we were focused on bags, we were focusing in many different things that made our personality or represent our personality. Today, even in the way that we live at home, we want to be much more ourselves. So I'm thinking at products like the App in Pink that we have in front of here, designed by Gaetano Pesce. Of course, was designed years ago with an idea, and at the end we discovered that that chair it's a sign of personality. It transfers many ideas that are based on inclusion, based on we don't want anymore too many limitations. We wanna live in the way that we want. Of course, we like to say in a beautiful way, but again, in these days, the design represents an inspiration for even the way of living at home, and we are at home what we want to be overall. So it's a mix of creativity, design, capability of interpreting the needs of the future, but even the attention at what I have at home should represent me as, should be representing my personality.
Wonderful. Absolutely. And then if we sort of go back to the actual space, Bradley, your lamps, one of which we can actually see here, you shared a wonderful story with me as to how that came to fruition, and it actually it dated back to a conceptual vase, you know. So I don't know if you would like to share that a little bit, because I thought it was just such a wonderful story about, as we have a lot now, about pieces being there, not being there, and what the meaning is of the object in its space.
Well, these pieces, well, not these particular pieces. The lighting didn't start until maybe 2 or 3 years ago, but my exploration of cotton paper or paper in general started when I was in graduate school about, what was that, 2012. And so in 2012, I was excited about playing with how materials can be used and in order to achieve something. And so one of the first things I did was I made a collection of flower vases out of cotton paper, fully aware that cotton paper, although it is much more resilient and robust than typical paper, it deteriorates and degrades when wet. And I wanted people to be confronted with the idea of either I preserve my flowers and I degrade my vase that I just paid good money for, or I preserve my vase and my flowers will die faster because they're no longer sitting in a water reservoir. And I wanted there to be just a really subconscious moment where a person had to have an aha and go, oh, I gotta make a choice. So I'm not obsessed with objects lasting for forever. I think things should go away, and I don't think things going away is a bad thing. The flip side, which is something that came out with my conversation with you, was making something from a delicate material turned robust. You have to be more thoughtful with how you treat it when you are the client or the end user. You can't just toss it in a corner. You have to be aware of the humidity in the room. So it requires people to be a little bit more conscious of the things that they own and how they treat those things. It's odd working with you, though, because your whole world is preserving and making sure things last forever. But I think in a weird way, there's two ways to achieve that. You can either shellac it and turn it into something that is impenetrable and impregnable, or you can take the care and the time to treat the delicate with respect, and those can last as well. So it's weird because when you brought that up, I was like, oh yeah, I did make some stuff out of a very delicate material for a company that's all about making sure things last forever. So, but I'm glad you went on that journey with me. I like that.
No, we are. We're definitely on that journey with you. And that's also why we work with so many incredible conservators and people that, you know, can help us be proactive with our clients in preserving. And we also often continue to speak with the designers and the artists to see what their thoughts are on what needs to happen next. Alexis, there is a bar, a very large bar that's very well attended. But it's a very heavy one too. Can you tell us a little bit more about the stone and the process and how that came to fruition?
Yes. So when we started kind of like coming up with the concept of the lounge and obviously the ideas of what pieces, obviously there's a set program that has to do, there's a functional areas that we have to follow, so that's the architect of me talking about it. And the layout has to fit some certain people and all that stuff. And then, of course, you start thinking about how we actually can do that process that he was mentioning before, is like how you do a handmade piece, no? We're talking about a decorative art and design fair. And architecture is handmade, you know? Actually, I happen to, over the years, I'm an architect, and I got really frustrated when basically I had that translation from paper to reality, no? We actually work in a bigger medium that artist does. And as I remember, always I had like my mentor in Spain, you know, always telling me that like if the concept is good, when you give the concept away, you lose control of your project because there's going to be so many hands that they're going to touch that project to make it reality that you might, if it's not a strong concept, it's going to get diluted, no? So over the years, being in Miami and experiencing and losing and battling, I started actually set up my design build company. So we have a construction side of it, and we have a much wider team, and we build our pieces, no? And to your question about the pieces on the bar that we do are handmade by me and by my team, you know? And the question of that idea of basically is handmade on space and it happened in that moment and in that time, it was important for us to happen in that fair, no? And the reason why is because we translate a lot throughout our projects using materials that are not meant to be that. That for us is a way of luxury, no? And because there's many ways to say luxury, no? So that stone that we see there is 3,000 pounds of an oolite stone, which is a local stone from the Keys. And the interesting part of the oolite is a stone that is actually the first 30 meters or 30 feet that you take from the key lime. The key lime is a much noble stone that has a purpose in life. No, it had the purpose is being a countertop, being a floor, being something. The oolite, it becomes the bad brother. That it becomes like you go to the landscape, we put it as a boulder there, and you're gonna grow mold, and then you're gonna be beautiful in 20 years. No, so we took that stone that kind of like has like that kind of like waste. It's a waste stone, and we basically present it as one of the main bars of the collector's lounge in the AIG, you know? So that for us, that's kind of like that circle back of creating that stone. My team wasn't really happy about me putting that stone here because they had to carry the whole thing, you know? I was chiseling in place and the whole place was a mess. But actually that's what makes architecture authentic, you know? You really dirty the space, you know? I was covered top to bottom with dust. Everybody was dusty, you know, for 7 days. She's laughing because she was dusty as well, you know. She was protecting the furniture, you know, and then we were plastering the space and all that stuff that happened. So, but at the end of the day, that process of making it happen, you know, inside and at that moment, you know, is what it makes the space special. No, it's not other things than that, so.
No,
Wait,
so Francesco, you were already there then in the process of protecting, right? But let's go
I wanted to
back
jump
Bradley.
in really quick before you go to the next part, because it just, and forgive me if I derail this, but as you were talking, I was thinking to myself, what we did with that space was not just make things by hand, but celebrate that they were made by hand.
Correct.
And then I was just thinking with AIG, you wouldn't be in business if there weren't objects that people cared enough about to want to preserve. And I think that that's how you start to make those things that people want to pass them down generation to generation, is there's something about them that draws someone in, and it's because you celebrate that it's made. Everything we encounter is made by hand in some fashion, but it's not always celebrated. Correct. So I think that I didn't want you to overlook that, because that's something magical about that space, is the celebration of someone was involved here. Anyway.
No, absolutely. Thank you, Bradley, for that. And it's also a celebration about some of the pieces actually existing for so many years, right, Francesco? There's certain pieces, what I understood from Lorraine, in the lounge that actually have been around for an extraordinary amount of time. I think 40 or 50 years, I was told.
We have two collections that, again, are more than 50 years old. And again, we are driven for sure by an idea that everything should be timeless. That is one of our values. I want to tell you a little story that has been part of our 2 years of experience. We just relaunched Le Bambole, and we start with the vision of the future, a partnership, a cooperation with Stella McCartney. And even with their team, with her, we were talking about values. Again, it was a perfect match. It is a perfect match because we were driven by her sensitiveness to the earth, to the environment. So our job is to find even solution that can use our partners. But producing in fashion is different than producing a couch. Three-seater couch has probably stronger need of materials that can last for 30 years. Again, it has been difficult. We produce internally a special solution to be able to use the same concept of Stella McCartney even for Le Bambole, this year 50 years old. From yesterday is officially available in the market. We decided Miami was the perfect place to present it, but again, we are talking about a 50 years old product designed by Bellini. Bellini at the time was not Mario Bellini of today. There was a vision of someone that realized that it could have been a successful product for 30 years. Again, fashion is sometimes really fast. Our industry doesn't move so fast. When you buy one piece of B&B Italia, you probably are going to keep it for 30 years. So often you buy jeans, a t-shirt, and maybe after 6 months you don't use it anymore. Again, the value that we have here, we want to bring, the message that we want to deliver is we imagine the future thanks to the partnership. We cooperate, we talk to important artists, they are creative, there are visions, there are values that are becoming more part of our life, timeless, earth, protecting. Those are the values that we need always to keep in mind. We like to say that we design for a beautiful life, but it's not only that. It's a DNA that must be part of who we are.
Wonderful. I've got one final question for each one of you. If there would have been sort of like an utopian universe or space, what would you create?
As like my wish of what I would like to
Could be inside,
create.
could be outside, could be lower, like a sort of fantasy land. Like, what would that look like?
Well, I think is I joke about before, and not take me too serious about that, but there is something interesting about like, obviously there's all these conversations about like going to Mars and creating spaces. Actually, all those exercises about like, okay, we go to another planet, you know, how we're gonna live, you know, of course you're talking about to an architect, you know, and where basically it's like, okay, you can actually create all the rules, you can actually create all the new standards, and why not, you know? It's actually a beautiful thing. And honestly, I think it's like we basically don't gonna see it probably, you know, but it will happen eventually, you know, the same way that the world actually got smaller and now we can basically live anywhere in the world and then everything is closer. Other places will be closer. So for me, that idea of like creating something that is not even invented and actually not doing it right, because obviously we're never going to get anything right at the beginning, you know, but if we don't do it, it doesn't happen. So, and I think that's for me something that I'm attracted to it, you know, is the way that we also, when we get projects, I always like to have projects that I never did before, because there's that learning process makes you be connected with the process, no? If we know too much about something, we don't think and we do it, no? So those challenges about like what's the ideal space or things, like things that basically we're testing, like the premises of like living, of like walking, of like anything that we already know and we assume that is the only way. So that for me is what triggers my interest.
Wonderful. Bradley.
I was, as Alexis was talking, I was trying to think of something to say. I'm a really big sci-fi nerd. I love sci-fi, I love fantasy. And Octavia Butler is a really fantastic author of what is now being called Afrofuturism, but at the time when she was writing it, she just happened to be a black lady writing sci-fi. The titles came later. But there's a book series she has called Xenogenesis, and in it, this woman finds herself in what she believes is a spaceship. And she finds it odd because anytime she has to use the bathroom, a toilet seems to appear. Anytime she's hungry, hot food seems to appear. And only later, spoiler alert if you actually read the books, only later does she find out she's been living inside of an organism. And that organism intuits and is chemically attached or tethered to her. And so for me, I think the future of design, or something I would like to execute in a utopian type of space, is where spaces, rooms, and objects don't have one functional existence, but they have the capacity or the capability to adapt to whatever is necessary. Almost like the room of requirement in Harry Potter. You walk in, and if you need a bathroom, it turns to a bathroom. If you need a dance floor, it turns into a dance floor. It's specific, and it's open, and it's vague all at the same time. And it knows when to not be and when to be. So utopian version of that would be some sort of technological advancement that we have where you can start to have spaces that don't have to be, again, everything I'm saying as I say it, roll it through my brain, I go, wait, their whole business is making sure things stay that way for forever. But for me, I look at like the Acropolis, for example, I go, it'd be so amazing if that could be, without needing to be repurposed, but it could just adapt and be something else that's necessary, so you don't have to have ruins any longer. Things, actually, no, I think I'm playing into AIG now. Things last forever because they can adapt to whatever is necessary when something needs to change. Versus you have a house for a family of 4, and when that family grows to a family of 8, they can't use that house anymore. I think that's silly. So I feel like if there's a way for things to grow and shrink and adapt and read and intuit, and I think we're close technologically, that's what I'd be interested in.
Well, we can already do this in the virtual world, right? So we already can have things that are catered to our needs almost instantaneously,
And test it
virtually.
out.
Yeah, and can test it out and you can demo and make the mock-ups. Francesco, what are your thoughts on this topic? I think we're a little bit more on the sort of conservative side of this panel. So.
No, it is really difficult. For me, again, it's based on inspiration. Our role is to inspire, and we were smiling, me and Dorana, we were together, and thinking at the modularity of some products that makes perfectly true what we just said. So it is a combination of things, and it's difficult really to. We want to inspire. We want to be more focused on we talk to people. That is what we should do, and we talk to people based on our style. I was thinking just now, while we were talking, I would like to talk about. I'm a person that loves to stay outside. I'm in B&B Italia, and we talk about interiors. I don't have time. I change probably. I'm in hotels at least 3 times a week, more or less, and instead I have to drive an organization in a way where you should enjoy your staying at home. So I'm not the perfect example of what should be done, but probably I listen, I look, and there is an entire team that has a presence. I'm talking about B&B Italia in Asia, in Europe, and everywhere in the world. Our capability is to understand what they say, what they want, and tell them what we believe based on our values and DNA should be the future. Again, I was last week talking to Piero Lissoni, that is the creative director of B&B Italia, and we were laughing about how we made experience making even mistakes. And no matter what, if you are not innovative, you should keep making mistakes. You cannot stop thinking. In these days, we were talking about indoor, and you say indoor or outdoor. Me, I imagine my products in the outdoor and the products that are designed for the outdoor inside the house. It is 15 years that we do outdoor products, but are inspired by the indoor. Again, it's a mix. It's a mix of influence that we should again share together, and that is the only way that we can make things much better. Again, it's difficult to say. It's based on us. Whatever we are gonna do is based on us, and even having more and more a clear vision to where we go and protecting. Again, I don't want to go back again, but it's a beautiful title. The Golden Age, Look into the Future, is perfect for all of us.
Exactly. So I'm just looking at Dustin, if we have time for a few questions, maybe? Yeah.
Yay.
So we're opening up to the floor. So anybody got any questions for us?
I'm seeing a hand in the back there, the gentleman with glasses, Marcelo Suro. Oh no, right in front of him, right there. This one, yeah, I see. Oh, they have a mic for you, sir. Thank you. Wait, you're not going to ask a question, Marcelo? You came all this way? I had to put him on the spot.
How do you see the golden age in the future going towards what's called the metaverse and 3D worlds that are created in computers? Like how do you see the mixture of furniture and design working its way into that?
I think at least what I've been excited about by things happening in digital spaces, not just metaverse, but even simulators of sorts, is being able to, actually my job I think is to make sure that whatever I present to a client is the best possible solution. And typically that's really difficult to do when you deal with tangible physical objects, because typically you have to have made that thing already to see if it's comfortable to sit on or if someone's going to like it. And I think with digital technologies, you can begin to iterate quickly and start to test things, maybe not always for comfort, but for appeal, for color. And so I can rather inexpensively already kind of create environments and decide if someone likes it or doesn't like it. And if they don't like it, then we can move forward in a different direction. Or if they do find it to be appealing, then all of a sudden that's something that we are almost 80% sure of, whereas before we'd only be 10 or 20% sure because it was just on paper. So I think the metaverse doesn't necessarily exist as a space for genuine retreat just yet. We still have been living as Homo sapiens with brains that are adapted to physical things. To just live in a VR headset is not where we are yet. I think in maybe another 100 years, sure. But now I think it's a space where you should use it as a vehicle for exploration and iteration.
I'm not a I'm not a big expert on the metaverse, but my take on it or the digital art or all the stuff, I think is actually, I'm sharing a little bit of your point of view, is a medium that helps you experience, or actually the VR that was, for example, in the world of architecture, VR is something that has been really popular lately, and more as it has a purpose, which is basically predicting something that it will happen in real life. So it's always that excitement of like, it's actually ongoing and it will be physically existing. And that is actually a tool that has been not just renderings, but always like there's these video walks that we provide to clients, and they actually create that level of experience before it happens. An educational side of it is actually interesting. No? I remember years ago, I was involved in a project for the director of Michael Bay, the Transformers director, and that's actually almost 10 years ago in another office that I was working. And funny enough, he was walking into the office, and I remember those talks about that he didn't want to see plans, he didn't want to see even renderings, he just want to walk the house with a guy, and that's how we comment on the design, you know. So we had to create like a crane engine, contractor, to do a VR, and then the guy was coming in the studio, and then walking around the house and making all his decisions. His vision, because he was so used to do it this way in his movies that he didn't want to use it as another way, you know? So that obviously today is much more approachable, and it's easier to do it for the clients, and it's a great tool that we're using. Of course, I'm a big lover of like touching things and living it, and actually I need to sit on the space, I need to feel the cold, I need to feel these things. But I think as the metaverse will happen, I think it will be something it's gonna open doors that I don't think that we know yet. I don't know yet. For example, that I think traveling is going to be a big thing in metaverse tomorrow. You know, that people that cannot travel physically will be able to travel on a digital world, and actually is going to provide some knowledge to that person, no? Which actually has a positive outcome. So things like that, I think, it will evolve because it's many things, and obviously digital art, of course, is going to become understanding what's his role in all that kind of like genre. But I think we will see. I would say, I don't know.
Any other questions? Hi, Anthony. Well, we're going to bring you a microphone.
Hi, it's Anthony Green from Picture That. It's sort of follow-up. People experience the world through 5 senses, right? Smell, touch, feel, sight, and hearing. The metaverse allows a larger audience of the world to experience art through sight. That seems to be the most powerful thing that's going to happen. And you can't do it through touch because I can't come to you or I can't come here. But if I see it, that's what the metaverse can do and bring you to it. So I'm curious about your thoughts about that. Why it's urgent and important for digital art, whether it's tied to, hopefully not tied to crypto, personal opinion. Isn't that really part of the immediate future of the growth of the art market?
I don't know. I mean, in my mind, I don't think the strength of a digital space like the metaverse is that it's a visual medium. In my mind, the strength of it is that it's a space where I'm no longer bound by the physics of shared reality. I can create things that gravity-based, they wouldn't exist if I were doing them right here in my studio. But in a digital virtual world, they can be whatever I choose them to be. I can even make maybe their gravity in that metaverse space is greater than it is here. So in my mind, visually, I think that's a nice way into it. But for me, what's more exciting is to spark people's minds on the amount of possibilities that we have at our disposal. With 3D printers hooked up to some sort of thing that I generated in a CAD modeling program where I wasn't thinking of gravity, I can bring it to reality with very few changes in between. But if I'm only showing, I look at it like this, it's almost like websites. If all your website is doing is acting like a textbook, then it's not really giving me more than I could get on a pamphlet or a brochure. If you're going to use the metaverse, which is this high technology that's doing so many things, and all it's really doing is showing me another JPEG, but this time the JPEG rotates in space, is it giving me anything more? So if it can give me more to where I go, I never would have been able, I can't see something like that in reality because reality prevents it from happening. That, I think, is more exciting for me.
I mean, I think it's like the metaverse or digital art, like, point of view, it has to be based in experience, okay? I think is we're seeing, and I've been seeing that even if we think about the retail world right now, nobody goes and shop pens because they can get it in Amazon, they can get it anywhere. I don't need to go to the store. The reason why I go to the store, the reason why I go to a place is because of an experience. Even retailers, like B&B, and besides their pieces, besides basically the product, they actually are creating those experiences for people to come and experience it. So I think they're still alive, and the digital world for me, it's something that it has to actually be a vehicle to provide a further experience that you cannot get doing something else. No, as I was saying, So, and also I think it's been a really quick growth and a bad understanding on the metaverse and the digital art and the NFTs as a form of investment, where basically, I remember people was coming to me and saying, listen, they open a portal and now you can buy a lot in Mars for $20,000. And then it's like, okay, and what are you doing Mars with $20,000 right now? And it's like, oh, who is doing it? And what is the point of that? And nobody knew, and everybody was buying it. And everything crashed and everybody lost their lots in Mars because obviously the developer is not actually ready yet. And those things for me is like, obviously, it will happen eventually, but again, if we use the digital art as another new way of experience, that is not something that we can get by going to a place, having a dinner, visiting a country, or which things that are actually outside our environment, I think that's a positive outcome, which it will actually get back to you in that idea of like, it's more than a site, it's more and more feelings that you can have of that, which we will get there, no? I mean, there's technology now that you can translate like a smell through a computer, So, and those things or you can print a steak, that's not something strange, So those things exist and exist for many, many years. Now, are we ready for that? I don't know. I mean, I don't think so, but I think it's been a bad reading, in my opinion, and that's me. I'm not an expert in metaverse. Don't take me as an expert because I'm here. I'm not here for that. But I think it's like we follow the trend, and the trend of like the NFTs and all that stuff. I mean, it's been based on that idea of like you have to do it because everybody's doing it, and I think it's not a good.
I don't know about that. I think what you have is like every technology. It starts. And it's a lot of people stumbling and falling and weeding through the dark. And like computers, when they first came out, there were a lot of naysayers. That'll never work. You got to get back on those typewriters. That's where it's at. And then eventually, technology caught up to where processing power became stronger. Screens became more resilient. And all of a sudden, no one wants to be back on a typewriter because all of the stumbling in the dark got us to a much better, brighter place. NFTs, I don't think, are the doom thing that people described them to be. It's just right now we're infants fumbling around with it and we don't quite know how to use them. I think if you're starting to talk about digital spaces, there are a lot of tools that can plug into a digital concept that can then bring something to life. If I am traveling to Spain via some sort of virtual space and I want to try that steak, maybe in a few years there will be the possibility to have that steak printed out and prepped for you in your own home like you were there in that place. Now saying that out loud, you sound like a lunatic. In 50 years, people will go, well, how did you eat before this? Right now, it's how did you get to Europe before airplanes? Like, oh, it took a long time. So I think we forget, we have very short memories for some reason as people, that technology start out horrible. They start out very bad, and if you stick with them and persevere because of a couple of lunatics, a few years later you go, I don't know how we did it before this.
But
When you build your
agree.
first house on Mars, I'm gonna come find you. And I'm
Exactly.
gonna say, wait a minute, Alexis, I remember you said something
No,
about
but
me.
I'm agree with your point. It's just that we're not ready. We just want to run before we walk, you know? So, but the process and mistaking it is actually the way that we do things.
You're
You
going to
know?
be the main developer for all of Mars construction.
I don't think so.
And I'm going to play back this video.
But for sure, we're going to put B&B there.
Oh yeah, naturally.
That chair
The
needs to be
technology
there,
naturally.
for sure. We need that chair.
Bambale on Mars.
Bambole 100 years from now, 100 anniversary,
Naturally.
50
We
years
said it
from
here
now,
first.
We're going to have it in Mars?
Of course, technology is part of our life, and we should be always open to it. It depends in the way that is used, and it depends in the way that, for me, technology in these days is great. Accelerate educational processes, accelerate understanding. It's great if it's gonna put all of us together and having a better way of talking, communicating, educating. We use technology for our products much more in advance than our competitors. We could invest involving designers. That again, it's a positive tool. It's gonna keep evolving. I believe that we are better people thanks to the technology in these days. But if you come to Milano, I always use this example. We have this beautiful event in Milano that is called il Salone del Mobile. That is, in terms of design, one of the main, we say the most important event. Everybody arrives there and there is this big excitement. They talk about, let's go and see the Fondazione Prada. Let's go and see. I always say, go in Piazza del Duomo, look at this beautiful architectural creation that has been made in the 1300s, where it was really a massive construction with, again, it's the technology to me, company like ours, these professionals, we need to use the technology to accelerate and make better our job. Until it's not gonna separate us from the real life. That is the way that I wanna see it. We do sales online, we open the e-commerce, we have websites, we do, yes, but again, even the e-commerce for us is really functional to have and serve clients that maybe are really far from our showrooms and they cannot see the product. But I'm still a big fan of going to a retail shop, asking to someone that should be the professional, I want to see the options. I may spend less time there because I already made my selection of products, but I don't want to think a situation where we separate each other and we don't consider the experience that we can transfer. And the technology cannot replace the human experience. That is my approach.
It's an and, not a or.
Correct. It is a tool to me.
Do we have any more questions? Final question from the audience? One final question.
First of all, that was incredibly fascinating, and I'm not even sure how to ask it. I just have like these sentences in my mind, because we were talking about like, the name of this talk is shaping our environment, and I'm an artist and a neuroscientist, and what we deal with a lot is how our environment is changing us, and how each and everything that we see is being processed in a certain way that influences later our thoughts, behaviors, emotions. It can be to the level of curved or firm lines. That's the level of things. And I wanted to know, when we think about technology, we can basically think also of neuroscience, right? And how we can use the technology to better understand the design that we're working with so intuitively. And you've mentioned also things from, you know, when you go to Milan and you watch the architecture, they didn't have neuroscience, but they had something very intuitive when it comes to design. So I wanted to think, and also, regardless, like not talking about the metaverse, okay? Not going there now with the neuroscience, this is a lot. But I wanted to know how you feel about, if you could choose tools, like if you could think, what's interesting to you in terms of how your design impacts human consciousness and cognition and emotion, etc., etc.
I think for me, it's kind of touching on what you said in the beginning, that it's kind of this inverted process where we're creating spaces thinking that they're going to nurture and support us, but in fact they end up dictating to us. And again, it goes to this point that we keep making rigid spaces, rigid physically and rigid conceptually. That kitchen can only be a kitchen. It can only be this way. It no longer has the capacity to be more or different than. And I think once we start to look at tech, actually this has always irked me. I'll try not to derail this panel, but what's always irked me is I work a lot with 3D printing. And when I approach 3D printing companies, they always say, "Oh, I'll give you a discount. I'll give you a discount if you can order more of these things that you want to have printed." And I go, I get why you want to do that, because of the Industrial Revolution, and you had to make a mold, and the more pieces you made from one mold, the lower the cost was. But a 3D printer does not care if I make one of them or 20 of them. Each one takes the same amount of time. The problem we have is, as a society, we keep creating new technologies and using them like old technologies. And so I see these galleries showing here, and people are working with things in such amazing ways, and then when it gets to the client, it's just a new way to paint a sofa or a new way to do a thing. And I go, oh, we were so close, but now we're treating these magical things like they're just Industrial Revolution machinery all over again. So I think when we finally start to see that these things have great capacity, spaces will change, and there might be a nice duality, a nice back and forth. I give, you give, and something beautiful can happen. But right now, I think we're still in the early phases where things are being used, and it's an inch forward and a mile back at the same time. I don't know if that answered your question. I wanted to get that off my chest, so you know what, that's just been sitting on me for a while. Alexis.
My turn. I mean, if we think strictly about architecture and what is an architect do, you know, I think there is something interesting that I've been seeing over the last years, which is the technology on the studios and the computing and the digital world that we actually now have accessible and we're doing, it evolved tremendously in the last 10, 15 years. Exponentially different. No? Even the people that is coming out of school right now, it's all about 3D. It's all about they talk into the computer and they design and they're brilliant doing that. The problem with that is like, when we look into construction, let's put it construction, because construction, fabrication, product design as well. But at the end of the day, there's different processes, but it's basically creating an object. It could be smaller or bigger. The technology that we have, at least for construction, has been stuck for the last 20 years. We're still putting mortar and bricks. Basically, we're still actually struggling to do a curve wall, you know? But in a computer, it's really easy. Everything is sustainable. Everything is immediate, you know? And I know, for example, it's something that I've been fighting in my studio because I grown doing physical models, you know, as an architect, you know? And right now I'm building a wood shop in my studio, you know? And everybody's looking at me, it's like, what are you doing? It's like, you're bringing a table saw and these, and why won't I use these things? I mean, we have a computer, we do it faster. And I remember that I had somebody that one time told me, you can design something on a computer digitally and everything works. But if you want to actually take that plan and then fabricate it, the first thing that you put, and it doesn't work, you realize that it's actually not a good design. It's not going to happen, you know? You have the laws of physics and all the stuff that we don't have on the digital, no? So I'm trying to bring back this because it's a much lower process, but it's much more conscious on what are you doing, and it's harder, no? So technology actually, I'm putting technology because it helps us to go back. In my case, you know, it helps you to realize that slow down, you know, you need to think what we're doing, and it's not that interesting, you know, at least in my case, you know, the number of, basically the volume that we basically try to produce today, you know, everything is about volume, speed, and visuals, you know, and I think it's like going back to the roots, or like take your time, put it right, and then discover what this actually use the technology for the build process, no? The construction process. We are now seeing 3D printed houses, you know? This is the beginning of that, you know? Because it allows us to have more tools than just people's hands, no? And then we're seeing now the car industries that they 3D printing cars, that they actually design out of an algorithm that basically builds a titanium case for a car that it cannot be done by a human hand. Those are real wins, you know, and it will eventually translate to architecture, it will translate to living, it will translate to all the mechanicals that we have in any space, no? And object-wise as well. So I think that's where we're starting to see, but I think we need to go to the tectonics of it, no? We need to go to the materials. If we don't know our materials and what we're working with, it doesn't matter what the 3D printer is gonna print. It's going to be a beautiful object, but it's not going to serve a purpose tomorrow. So,
But don't you think it's a shame that it's 2022, building technology is where it is, and it's still expensive to build a curved wall?
it's a shame.
Like, I think that's...
I actually, and in fact, I'm actually be promoted because
To put a curved window on a curved wall, you would have thought I asked to fly to the moon. It makes no... So I don't know. I feel like building technology intentionally stays slow because of developers who have found their niche, they found how they can make their dollar, and if someone comes along with an affordable curved wall, now all of a sudden I'm out of business. And I think that's part of the reason we keep stumbling, is there's so much potential and there's so many people preventing it because they see it not as a plus, but as a way to become obsolete. And I don't know. I just get mad when someone says, "Oh, if you want to curve it, it's another $2,000." I'm like, this, come on, man. It just anyway. I don't know. I just find that I think that we could be so much better, and I think we create excuses and reasons why we aren't when the reality is so simple. Again, I'm just getting this off my chest today. You all just happen to come to my therapy session. That's what this is.
No, but it's exactly like this, you know. I mean, there is a reason why I started setting up my construction company, because out of frustration on designing something, and then obviously when you're in the business world, and then a client comes to you and says, "You designed something that is too expensive for me. I cannot afford that," and you said it's not true. Is that the problem is that nobody knows how to build it properly, and they basically they overprice it because basically they need to cover the expenses, you know, or they don't want to pay for the mistake instead of like. We're seeing those things as a learning process. If you learn how to do a curve wall, tomorrow you're going to be the only one doing curve walls in an affordable place, you know, an affordable manner. So it's actually a learning process, but it's pretty set up. We're not going to change developers and construction. We're going to be battling with them for a lot of many years. But I think it's a saying on like, I think it's something to teach. And I wanna take 1 second, and you can actually jump after that.
I don't want to jump. I don't want to jump in this conversation.
But we have a clear example. Right now, we're building a house in Miami in partnership also with B&B, and it's handmade. And it's been so difficult to get the house. We have a great client, and we have actually, which has been this type of person that says, "We're going to do it this way, this way, and this way." And the guy's like, "Okay." It's like, "Are you saying yes?" It's like, so, and it has white concrete, it actually have a curved glass wall. So things that are kind of like impossible to do, that's what we basically sell, and then we're building it, and it's a great experience. And it's kind of like and we're doing it in partnership with B&B, happening to do that as well. They've been involved in the project as well. And the beauty about that is like, and the same thing with this render that we're seeing for the lounge, is like we're seeing an image, everything now is this contamination of renders of images. You don't even know what's real and what's not. And we're proud of like showing that, and then you can walk and see it, and it's pretty close to that. So having that experience from the paper to the reality, and then actually that process is what is interesting. We're gonna do mistakes, of course, but we're learning. So I think it's taking the leap on design objects or anything, even furniture, you know, the technology that is behind the furniture production today, even though that they're doing the same design for 50 years, is completely different than they were doing before. So, and besides the craftsmanship that you guys have, so.
I don't want to jump in this conversation. We use the technology as a tool to make things better, and again, it's great things. But I'm one of the person that has an iPhone and never work. I have a new computer, get broken. So we use the technology to produce better goods, but it's driven by our, again, desire to make good quality products. We are talking about large scale, big scale production. We want to produce goods that are going to stay for 30 years in the homes of our clients. You can buy products like ours, and again, may come from wherever in the world, from which producer in the world, thinking I'm gonna save, but at the end, after 2 years, they get broken and they're gonna get waste, and they are not gonna be produced with the correct approach, in our opinion, that is based on sustainability. And we come with experience. Technology for me is a tool. I use the technology to show my products, for sure. For us, social media are important. Again, someone from Montana, today even Montana is growing, but I'm using from somewhere in a different place in the world that has no access to come to our showroom can buy the products online. Again, it's the way that we use it. If we use it with the correct approach, of course, it's a great tool. But we are in the design, and again, the technology never worked with me.
No, we at AIG, we're in the risk management space. We use technology a lot to assess the financial risk, the risk with regards to the actual collection, the object, the condition risk, and then it's location risk. So we do all these three things, but that would be an entire secondary panel that we could talk about that, which we actually did before, and we will continue to do. I want to thank everybody here in the audience today for being such active participants and great listeners. And of course, I want to thank all my panelists here and their organizations and companies to make this Collectors Lounge 2022 a reality for us. And we couldn't have been more proud and grateful for their contributions. So thank you, everybody.